Hi guys! I have been healthy for some time now, first things off. I would have told you guys that last week, except for the tiny little problem of my internet didn't want to work. By the time it did want to work, though, I was prepping for my next great adventure, and I really had no time to actually post the video. So that's what this week's video is going to be about. It is going to be about that adventure, but the adventure took the entire weekend, and as a result, this video is going to be super long. Just thought I'd give you that heads up right here and now. This video is going to be much longer than any of my other videos. In fact, the script for this, where I said all of the things I wanted to say, ended up being 4 pages and 2,000 words. Yeah. That should be an indicator. Most of the videos are usually usually clock in at roughly 400 words, I think. I'll have to go back and check. But, yeah. Last Wednesday, while I was having the internet issues, I heard a couple of my fellow interns talking about going on a trip this weekend, and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then I found out they wanted to go to Malaysia. For those who aren't immediately in Southeast Asia, and therefore I have no immediate need to know about Southeast Asia, Malaysia and Singapore are connected by 2 bridges. And those bridges are basically the only way that you can travel to anywhere from Singapore and have it be land-based. I thought this sounded really, really cool. But then I got told that it was this past week, that they were going this weekend. And I'm like, wow, that's really short notice. And that kind of freaked me out, because I expected to have more time to plan than, just 2 days. But as we figured we could get most of the planning done pretty quickly, I signed up to go, and we agreed to meet after work the next day to get everything planned and booked and all pretty. When the next day, Thursday, came around, I was getting slightly freaked out because usually I have a couple of days to prep myself up when I'm going on an adventure. I mean, last time I went on anything like this, I had a week's notice ahead of time. Hi, Dan. And I was kind of thinking, should I back out? But I decided at the end of it that I didn't want this to be a thing I regretted not doing. I didn't want to look back on my internship and be like, I should have gone to Malaysia instead of staying in that weekend. So I showed up Thursday and planned everything out. There were a couple of snafus with credit cards and debit cards and trying to dodge international banking fees. But when we met again Friday morning, we got things more or less settled. We all showed up to work with our backpacks or suitcases, as the case was, full of stuff that we'd need, and at the end of work, we all went to the subway station closest to us, closest to where we'd be catching the bus. Before we actually went to the bus, we got food, because we figured we had some time to burn and we'd just gotten off work. After we got the food, we then promptly went to where the bus was and discovered that there was no bus here sign, which is something that KKKL lines really needs to work on. We ran around the dark parking lot for 15 minutes, and we were really scared that we'd miss the bus and thereby the entire adventure before it ever started. But we eventually found a person with the company who could tell us that the bus was, coming, just it was a little bit late, and that we hadn't missed it at all. When we got on the bus, the ride was several hours long. Think like Greyhound in the States, and you'll be pretty close to it. And that was partially made longer by the fact that we had to go through 2 security points. Why 2? When Singapore and Malaysia are again connected by bridges, and that the only way to get out of Singapore by land is through Malaysia and those bridges? I have no idea. It doesn't make sense to me. But several things don't, so I just kind of showed my passport and moved along. We got to Kuala Lumpur, which is going to be KL throughout the rest of this video. And when we got in, it was really late. It was after midnight. I think it was like 12:30 or later. And when we got to the hostel, we discovered it was right next to a club. Okay. Well, after several hours on a bus, we didn't really want a club immediately. We wanted food. And we wanted the chance to stretch our legs. The heat was really swelteringly hot. Just so hot. But the nightlife was pulsing because it was Friday night. And without too much difficulty, we found a Mongolian barbecue cart that sold great satays. I think that's how you pronounce it. Satays? Either way, it's just grilled meat on a stick, but it is really good grilled meat on a stick. We enjoy the simple things in life. The group stayed out walking for a bit after that, and we got back to our hotel rooms just in time to get approximately 2 hours of sleep that night. Then we woke up and got ready to go climb a mountain. Yeah, you heard that right. We climbed a mountain on approximately 2 hours of sleep. We're brilliant. It wasn't actually that big of a mountain, which helped, but before we got there, we had another hurdle to pass. The fact that there were 5 of us. There's only supposed to be 4 passengers in a normal taxi at any one time, so we either had to find cabbies who didn't care or find bigger cabs. With the first taxi ride, we found a cabbie who didn't care. But, hot damn, did he argue. I mean, I get that cabbies are supposed to be chatty, but seriously. He and one of the people in the group just kept going on and on about the price, and I didn't blame her. She was trying to save us a bit of money, and I guess I couldn't really blame him because he was trying to earn said money. But at some point I was just willing to pay the $10 extra to get him to shut up. If it meant that he would just go to a different topic, if that meant that we could settle the price and just go to a different topic, I would have paid those $10, yeah. Just as long as it wasn't a lecture, and he was really lecturing. I have a poor tolerance for being lectured. The moment it happens, you lost your chance to talk to me, and I go on the defensive. I'm a grown woman. I will not be talked down to like I'm 5. I'm sorry, that's the quickest way to get me to exit the conversation. When we got dropped off, we got a good view of the mountain. No one had actually mentioned climbing, and the trip up the mountain was pretty hard and kind of exhausting for me, but we all made it. And the entire way up, we were accompanied by curious monkeys. They were used to being fed by people who visited the temple, and they had absolutely no fear of humans. None. We got a lot of pictures of them, including the ones with tiny babies. And then we just got to the top. Sadly, the top of the mountain didn't feature any monkeys, but oddly enough, there were chickens. It must have been a child christening day, for lack of a better term for a Hindu tradition, because there were more than just a few toddlers and infants that we passed. And as we got deeper into the cave, we saw statues and stories painted on the walls, as well as shrines and plaques. I found out later that the temple that we went to, Batu Caves, was dedicated to Lord Muruga, son of Shiva and Parvati, and the brother of Lord Ganesha. That has absolutely no relevance to anything at all. It was just a nice little bit of trivia. When we went down when we left the temple, we had to walk down the same steps with the same monkeys, but this time we brought snacks. I held on to the snacks I had for a while until it was pointed out that there was a mama monkey right behind me, and her kid was like holding on to her fur with like all of his tiny little strength. The mama noticed I had food, and I decided to not make her come any closer to me than she had to. I just I stepped forward and I held out the food, and she waited for about all of a second before she reached out and grabbed the food right out of my hand. She got it all in 2 bites. I guess she was hungry. One of the others in the group described the monkey's hands as soft, but to me, that hand was entirely strength. That hand would have messed me up. Yeah. We also visited a zoo while we were there, at the suggestion of the cabbie, and we kind of regret that. The zoo was tragic. There were a lot of animals that were in really small confines, and weirdly enough, there was a rabbit in the same display as a turtle. I mean, I like rabbits and I like turtles, but they probably shouldn't be in the exact same exhibit. Anyway, we felt bad about giving them our money, even if we did see free roaming peacocks. We got back into the taxi after that, which meant even more lecturing. And I was so glad to get out of the cab when we arrived at the Twin Towers. We spent a lot of time goofing around and taking selfies because, dude, it's freaking Twin Towers. Duh. But then we realized we had a bit of extra time on our hands to explore, so we tackled the Malaysian subway system and the prospect of getting lunch. After a bit of getting lunch. After a bit of getting lost, Freudian slip, we found Chinatown, and the irony of going to Chinatown in Malaysia when we have a Chinatown in Singapore. But we went to this little shop that served fried noodles. The owner, the granddaughter of the original owner, explained that we could have the special of the day, which was either chicken or frog fried noodles. And so the table ordered 2 frogs and 3 chickens. That was when things got a little tricky. You wouldn't expect lunch to get tricky. After 10 minutes, 2 plates were brought out. They were set in front of me and another girl in the group, and as we'd both ordered chicken, we assumed it was chicken, and we started digging in. 10 minutes later, 3 plates came out, and we found out we'd been eating the frogs, not the chicken. We'd had no idea. We were a little bit less enthusiastic about lunch after that, but everyone had a good laugh. And honestly, frog wasn't that bad. Then it was time to go back and get on the next bus, and we went to Malacca. And don't try to find an anglicized version of that city's name. You won't find a consistent one. I've tried. We were staying in a part of the city that was very historical, very old, and we stayed actually right next to a couple of the really important things. But the hostel that we were staying in was owned by a South African man who seemed almost like the old mentor in all the old fantasy novels. The gruff former adventurer who had a beard and, deep tan skin and who like seeing the next generation off to explore the world like he did. It was fun. We were right on the river, and as night rolled around, we went to the night market, which was really, really fun. There was so much food to try and so much to see, including a karaoke contest with at least 100 people watching. I didn't participate. And there was jackfruit, and there were tons of different kinds of foods, and I'm pretty sure I can't pronounce a lot of the names, but it was really good. After a few hours of us being there, it started raining, and we had to retreat to this little bar while we waited out. But the entire thing just really did feel like all the third Fridays from back home. The block parties that I went to before I went off to college. 7,000 miles, and people were people. They like celebrating. When the rain stopped, we walked around for a bit, and then we all discovered we were having different ATM problems. That seemed like a good reason to, go home for the night, and so we managed to get a full 6 hours of sleep that night. Luxury! When we got up, we fixed a lot of the ATM problems, and then we got breakfast at the hostel before we headed out. Sadly, there wasn't actually much open on Sunday morning, but we wandered around the historical district, and we paid a lot more attention to it than we had during the night. So we ended up seeing a lot of the history behind the Portuguese ruling, actually, of Malaysia, which was apparently settled, or at least started, in Malacca. There were old cannons to climb on, and giant ships to take pictures of, but the things that fascinated me the most were the very old Christ Church, circa 1753, and the Sultan's Palace. I mean, as for the church, it was literally older than my country. And it was holding service in Mandarin Chinese when we walked past it. As for the Sultan's Palace, there were a lot of old folk tales, and there was history of the pre-Portuguese rule. And there was a garden that was really... Okay, well, the garden had seen better days, but there was this corner of it where I could kind of see how people liked walking through it. We wrapped up our time in Malacca with a trip to the food court, and I discovered that after 2 months of being here, 2 months, my taste buds had really gotten used to the local cuisine. Everyone else in the party had been there for a week or 2 weeks, or the next person had a month. But while I still viewed some of the food as really spicy, it didn't bother me nearly as much as it would have if I'd still been living in the States. At worst, it means that if I do get a really spicy dish now, I will reach for a cup of Milo, that's Nesquik for people in the States, and just wash it down. Seriously, that's it. When we got back to the hostel, we figured we had a little bit of time to blow, but we didn't have nearly as much as we thought. We found out that the place we had to go to pick up the next bus was almost an hour outside of town at a golf course called Afamosa, and that if the traffic wasn't with us, we could very well miss our bus. We had, the traffic was really great for one time in my life, and the cabbie got us there. But for a while, it seemed like the trip was going to end how it started, with us panicking and trying to catch the bus on time. Of all the ironies, the bus was actually late. But all of that was forgiven and forgotten the moment we realized we'd gotten the pimped-out bus with the in-flight entertainment and the meal. the back massages were a nice touch too. We rode back in style, and when everything was said and done, we ended up splitting at a subway station back home in Singapore. I would have stayed around. Actually, we all probably would have stayed around and gotten a meal, but I had a midterm to take, which I did, and a shower to take, which I did, and a call to take, which I did, and then a job to go to in the morning. And so that was Malaysia. There will be more pictures on my Facebook, so stay tuned. But until next time, much love to my peeps.